Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Space Spectra number 4, Found in Space. So first of all, now you can see Daniel Duran is our behind the scene technician at the moment. She's helping us with all our technical bits in the background. And it's a pleasure to host another event today. And this one, with respect to all the space spectra that we've done in the past, it's not going to be a panel conversation, but it's going to be a proper workshop. So space spectra is a concept that was born together with the Ivona team to give access to any students, young professionals, or anybody that would like to switch their career from what they're doing now into space, to have access to a wide spectrum of possibilities, identities, and professions in the space industry. Because as we know, it's just not all about engineers, rocket scientists, or astronauts. And today, basically, what we want to do is taking all the knowledge that Ivona has as a talent acquisition agency for space and give tools and tips to anybody in terms of CV building, networking, how you brand yourself, your mindset, because we know that today is very tough. And especially when you are a new graduate, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to navigate this very messy jungle at the moment. So we want to try and give back as much as possible from our own experience, but mostly we will not only have Ivona team on board, but we have Jacob Smith, who is also a student, an aerospace engineering student, and is the chair of the SEDS in the UK. So he will be really the voice of most of the concerns, fears, doubts that every graduate at the moment is really experiencing. So thank you very much again for being here. And I will shortly introduce our panelist or workshop expert today. So I'll start with Adele Fox. Adele has been my wing woman for the past events, and she's been absolutely great with everything from start to the end. But today she will be part of the workshop. She is the head of marketing at Ivona Space, and she has plenty of experience with different industries, especially with branding. Well, look at Space Spectra. She's done a great job. So she will share with you how to market yourself mainly, and what will be the red flags during interviews, and anything that you need to tweak on your CV or anything else that you need for networking. Jack Madley instead is one of the 4 co-founders of Ivona Space. It's been in recruiting basically all his life. So he has quite a lot of experience with mindsets. He's seen a lot of characters and personalities, and he will be able to share how you can really be found in space, giving proper tips on CV building and the skills that you need to highlight so that you can be visible and accepted in the space industry. And then Jacob Smith, as I was saying, is himself an engineering student from the UK SEDS, and he will be sharing, before we start with the workshop, he will be sharing himself, his concerns and the concerns of all his peers about what is happening with the hiring system at the moment. Where are we going? What can we do? Where can we apply? How is it going to work with this very uncertain climate at the moment? So that said, I will give the floor now to Jacob, actually, to start and share with us what is his perspective in this very uncertain aerospace industry landscape at the moment.
Thank you, Bianca. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for the invite from Ivona. And this looks like a really, really useful workshop. So well done for being here in the first place. So I'll just give a bit of background on UK SEDS for anyone who doesn't know, just to give a bit of context. So we're the UK chapter of the global SEDS movement. So we put on events for students across the country who are interested in space. We educate them, we give them opportunities to build skills, we advocate on their behalf, and we kind of basically form that link between students and the space community. enable them to connect with companies and individuals within the space sector in the UK. So as the chair, I kind of oversee all of our activities, and I see a lot of what we do and a lot of what students are feeling across the country. But I'm not saying that I am speaking for everyone, because everyone has their own opinions, their own views and difficulties and troubles that I may not have picked up on, or we may not have picked up on. So if there's anything that I missed, feel free to get in touch or just share your ideas as well. But yeah, so we do a lot of careers work. We operate the spacecareers.uk website, and we get a lot of applicants through that for different jobs. And we do a lot of, like, as I said, advocacy, gathering data, gathering student views, talking to people at events, which at the moment, unfortunately, can't be in person. But a lot of it, I think, is going to be covered later on, as in the actual help. So a lot of difficulties that traditionally come up for students is around networking, how to network. That comes up very frequently as one of the most important things you can do to really immerse yourself in the sector and give yourself the best chance of getting a job. So the networking tips later will be really helpful for that. Obviously, before you even get to a job, you need to have applied with a CV, with a cover letter, that sort of thing. So there's lots of tips going to come later on that. And then in interview techniques, the next level after that. So there's lots of difficulties. There's no one saying it's easy. But there's little tricks I'm sure that's the Avona team will share later. So just really to share a few of the issues as I see them, or as we see them at UK SEDS, is well, let's just start with the elephant in the room, COVID. There's a lot of job cuts being made, so that is obviously a big concern for people. But it really depends, I think, in what area you're looking. So because a lot is moving online, that means that's good for people who know how to build websites and build stuff online and create all this online technology. So there's going to be more opportunities in certain areas, even though there's cuts in others. But specifically for the space sector, I think that there's not enough graduate roles in the first place. There's quite a lot for like engineering roles, but there's not lots. And as Bianca said at the start, it's not just engineering. And if you're looking in marketing or business development, things like that, there's not a lot of graduate roles at all. There's not many opportunities. So it is quite competitive, and you need to know where to look. You need to know where to find them. So networking, again, can be key. And just knowing about the sector in general. And then if we think that, okay, after the graduate role, I kind of get this picture that in the space industry, there's this level at the bottom where you can enter as a student after university. And there's a lot of high level roles, but in the middle, there doesn't seem to be a lot of like mid-level entry roles. So one good option, I think, for a lot of sectors is getting some skills in one sector and then moving into another one you're more interested in later. Within the space sector, that's, I think, a bit more difficult, with there being fewer opportunities at that level as well. So you really need to get your foot in the door. And then moving on to the actual application process that I kind of brought up a little bit earlier. We did UK SEDS did a survey recently, so I thought I'd just share the results and like the general idea that we got from students from that. So the application process, yeah, it takes a lot of time, and we appreciate that as students. There's a lot of time you put into this, especially with your studies as well, and a lot of effort needs to be put in. And it can be quite disheartening when you don't. When you put a lot of effort in, you don't really get anywhere with them, especially you don't get feedback. So we noticed that across our volunteers in UK SEDS that people were mentioning, we don't get much feedback from jobs. So we thought, let's see if this is a wider issue in the UK, in the student population. And we basically, this is what we did. We did a survey, and we found So I'm just going to look at the stats, out of 218 unsuccessful applications for jobs, for early career jobs, so internships or direct entry at graduate level. Out of 218, we got 75% received no feedback after any stage of the application process. So that's pretty big. If we look at then after an interview, how many students didn't get any feedback after an interview? 56% of applications made that happened. There's no feedback after an interview. And 33% it was after the final stage. So that final interview, there might only be 2 candidates left. And out of all these applications that we surveyed, a third of them didn't get any feedback at all after that final stage. So this is a really big issue, I think. I'm just going to quote actually one student in this survey. Despite being rejected from 1 internships, the feedback cheered me up. Before I was getting nowhere with job applications, and the feedback gave me something to work on. So even just that little generic feedback statement, if there's like a lot of candidates failing on the same thing, I think is really useful for organizations to do. We also propose to companies to always give feedback after an interview. There's a lot of companies who don't, clearly, from this research. Then we also expanded in this survey to look at the actual job applications, the job descriptions themselves, and the sort of skills that companies are looking for, qualifications, and found that a lot of students, so on average, each respondent decided not to apply to 7 jobs because in the last 12 months, because of a small number of essential requirements that they thought they might not have. So say it says 3 years of experience in a specific thing when they had 2.5, and they thought, oh, I'm not going to apply to it then. But my advice for students is to apply for that. Don't assume that the job app description is perfectly written or they actually write what they need. Just go for it. And think that, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can gain experience. It's not just years. That's not really a good measure of it. Yeah, feedback and skills and qualifications, I think, they're big things within application processes. And then within the actual, say, CV itself, I think some concerns at the moment are that there's fewer opportunities to get things to put on your CV, if that makes sense, in the COVID times. There's fewer in-person events. There's fewer, say, opportunities to get hands-on skills, which employers look for. So maybe later, some of the team can shed some light on that, and perhaps some alternative opportunities. So I think I've reached my 10 minutes.
That's great, Jacob, and thank you very much for sharing these numbers, because some of them are quite concerning if you think about the percentage of no feedback at all. But also it is true when we talk about the job description, and we can address this later, because this is another thing I tend to say a lot. I myself didn't think I was fit for jobs I've applied. I applied anyway, and I got all of them. So it's just a limitation that we have in our mind, and we will address this later. But really thank you, Jacob, for this insight, which is extremely important. It's really pointing out what needs to be done more for the students, but and not only for the students, but pretty much for everybody who never really gets anything from rejections or whatever. So, well, hopefully we can answer and help most of those doubts today. So I will pass on to Jack, that can explain exactly how Ivona is within what's the mission that you actually have as a recruiting company, specifically for the space industry. And by the way, I want to say that from now on, if you want to take notes, please do so, but the recordings will be available, as much as a booklet will be available on our website, or to anybody that's just registered, will be sent out via email. So you will have all the resources and everything that we'll be talking about, tips and tricks, on your booklet. So don't you worry if you are missing anything today. And the past 15-20 minutes will be for Q&A with our panelists. So as much you can start already, send out your questions. I've seen something coming around. So Jack, floor is yours.
Thank you, Bianca, and thank you, Jacob, as well. I think that was really very interesting, and I would encourage you to remind me of a few of those points you've raised a little bit later on as we discuss, because I think some of those points we can really shed some light on what's going on there, but also maybe share some advice on how to deal with those situations. So yeah, just jump in later on in the discussion as we go forward. I think we can really share some information on that. But yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of Evona. I set Evona up with my 3 business partners in 2018 to supply primarily new space companies on a global basis. Our motto is never go to space alone, and that goes to everybody we engage with, anybody we partner with, whether it be candidates, clients, interns and graduates. It's ultimately, from a client perspective, they need the best talent out there to achieve their missions and to achieve their goals. And we can be that partner to take them there. From a candidate perspective, it's ultimately we want to introduce you to the next space opportunity, the next career in space. And again, we say utilize us for that. I think our end mission is to be the #1 and leading space talent partner globally. We've in the 2.5 years we've been going, we've placed in Asia, North America, South America, multiple countries across Europe, the UK. Obviously, we're based in the UK, so we're getting there. The great thing about the space sector that it's always growing. There's always new sectors popping up. We today have been on a video call with somebody in the space tourism sector, which is another vastly growing part of the sector of the space industry. Something that's very, very exciting. I really don't think it's going to be very long before people have got the opportunity to actually get to the edge of space, get into the stratosphere and then beyond. So it's really exciting. Yeah, and like I say, our mission is to ensure that we are the #1 talent provider on a global basis. So that is an introduction to us and what we're looking to achieve. I think the other thing to add on to that is it's not just about recruitment, although we are primarily a recruitment business, is that we are really passionate about what we call raising the curtain on the space sector. And we really want to share our experience, share our knowledge of the space sector with the next generation of students, space sector professionals, people who are looking to get into the sector. And because I think sometimes people don't really understand the vast amount of opportunities within it. And I know sometimes based on the current level of career advice that's available to hand, space sector experts and hopefully stuff like this, platforms like this will really shed some light on the real opportunities within the sector. So that's something we're really passionate about. From a personal perspective, I'm really thrilled to be presenting and be involved in the actual panel today as a co-founder of the business, because it's something I've really wanted to do for a long time. I've been in recruitment for the last 10 years. Prior to that, I was a graduate myself. I went to Swansea University in South Wales. And I've always thought that it'd be great to have a platform where we can share experience. Once someone has had a certain amount of time within a given sector and you can impart knowledge, then I think that person should do that, should give back. So this is great to be part of this panel today, and hopefully we can share some advice and experience that will help you guys get the career that you're looking for, that you're aspiring towards.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much. And well, I think now we can start with the official workshop. And for that, I'll give word to Adele.
Hi. Well, first of all, thanks very much. I'm used to being behind the scenes at these things, so it's nice to be in front of the camera for a change. So yeah, I mean, as you know, following on from what Jack said, obviously what Evona do is, you know, we're very passionate about nurturing talent. At Evona, we are all STEM ambassadors. Without this future workforce coming into the sector, there would be no future for Evona. So this is us making sure that what we're doing here is nurturing careers, and what we're doing here is providing a strong future for the space sector as a whole. So yeah, it's great to be involved in things like this. this particular workshop, it's our mission here to set you up and provide you with the tools to kind of confidently begin your career in space. We'll be covering some of the real basic things that we see people do wrong on a day-to-day basis, and the things that we think can differentiate you from other candidates, or people that are that have transferable skills into this sector. So the purpose of this is to really give you that kind of setup and the tools to be able to do that. So we'll be covering things like CV structure, interview techniques. We'll be talking about, I mean, Jack knows better than anybody here, the kind of things that companies look for when they're looking to employ people, what it is that they're constantly asking for when they're asking for whether they're asking for internships or C-level executives. He's on the front line there, talking to the companies that all of you, I'm sure, are dying to talk to. So, we're a resource here to utilize, and we're available here for you today to discuss those with us. So we'll be covering things like what companies are looking for. I'll be talking a little bit about networking skills, how you brand yourself as an individual, as the head of marketing for Avona with a considerable number of years of marketing experience behind me. Branding and putting your best assets at the fore of what it is that you do is how you win business, and therefore that's how you build your future within these sectors. To be honest, a lot of what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis, whether you realize it or not when you're going for a position, is marketing. You put your best self as a product out there. You put your best front on when you go to an interview. So a lot of what you do, whether you know it or not, is marketing. We all are marketers, and probably expert marketers on a day-to-day basis, and you don't even know it. I think the other thing that we'll also be covering here is how to sort of broaden your horizons of how you can get into the space sector. Don't just think very narrowly about I want to be, for example, I want to be a thermal engineer, although I know that's exactly where Bianca came from. I want to do this specifically. If you can't forge that route, if it is too difficult for you, if you are getting knocked back, think about other ways in which you can get into the companies that you like. So we'll be talking a little bit about that too. And just covering, we are here as a resource today. As Bianca said, we'll be giving out this PDF document, which is a very simple document. There's lots of great information in there. There's a CV template in there. There's interview prep questions, things that you should perhaps be thinking about before you go to an interview, so you can be prepared for the response. There's links to hackathons and conferences and great webinars and companies that do internships, and links to great organizations like UK SEDS that will help support you in your endeavors into the space sector, as well as lots of other little hints and tips, because we hear what you guys need on a day-to-day basis. We know that there's a need to help support this incoming workforce into the sector, and it's why we set up Space Spectra. It's why we're STEM ambassadors. So this is us trying to help going forward, so that we'll support you throughout your whole career. So eventually you'll be the CEOs that we place in these huge organizations. That's the idea.
Well, that's good, Adele.
Not promising anything.
Yeah, well, it's a good wish. It's a good wish, but it is true. What we want to give today, and it's so true what Adele just said. On a daily basis, we are pretty much marketing ourselves. So the very first thing we have to work on is our own branding. For example, people that the way Adele was employed and for her specific skills and talents, it's because she's been working on showing them on a daily basis. The way I've been recognized in the space industry from nowhere, where I'm coming from, and I was an unknown student, pretty much like everybody when they start, nobody knew me. But then how I started to market and brand my presence onto the socials, in all the other events, this is what will get you recognized. So basically, the more you express your voice, even if you think that is a bit overboard or is going against what the establishment is telling you to say or to do, this is what will get you recognized. And this is what will get you into the right place in the space industry. Also, voice out what you like to do. Not everybody can do everything. For instance, I never liked, out of all the aerospace engineering stuff you could do, you could go into fluid dynamics, you can go into the thermal, you can go into the structures. I never wanted to work with structures. I hated them. So I never said I could do anything just because I want a job. I was in a very, very niche specific market. And this is how I started to find my first very job, which was very niche. So be specific about what you like, what you are giving your best in, and ask for those positions because they exist. And maybe people that want to employ those people don't know that you are expert into those fields. So say exactly what you want to do and where you would like to make a difference. And it's very, very important. So now, actually, we can go straight into the networking tips and how you market yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I think I support completely what it is that you just said. And the way in which I would recommend everybody approaches this themselves is the way in which I kind of approach every single project and campaign that I do within marketing. Set yourself an objective or a series of objectives, but be very specific about what those objectives are. You know, either you want to find out more information about this particular internship, you want to find out how you can work within a different country, for example, or you want to know more about a specific field. Know exactly what it is that you're asking before you ask it, and then find the right people to ask. Because I think quite often, and this is, Bianca said this on a previous webinar, and it resonates with me quite frequently. You don't go into a restaurant, and I think you're better to say it. This is your phrase.
Yeah, so it's like when you are very hungry and you sit into a restaurant. Anyway, you have a menu and you choose what you want. You just don't walk into a restaurant and say to the waiter, "I'm hungry, I want food." You specifically ask what you want out of the menu. Although you're hungry, so you would probably eat everything. But first you sit down and you choose from the menu. It's pretty much the same here. When you go and ask anybody for help or for a job, for an internship, for an interview, of course, many people are in such despair. Like sometimes when I was a student, I had absolutely no money. I was broke as hell. So I was desperate to get a job. But at the same time, I needed to know where I could make a difference. So I had to ask, first of all, myself, what do I want to do? And where would I excel as an engineer? Because the competition is big. And then I started asking exactly if those professors or whoever in the industry would need anybody that had my skill set. So I asked from the menu of engineering what I wanted to do.
I think that's a really great example of exactly how you should start off networking, and exactly how you should start off looking at this as a kind of a bit of a project. Obviously, I come from a marketing background, so I'm always going to apply pretty much everything I do to the skills that I have. But it's a really good point that you should go away, consider what it is that you want, and then find the right people to talk to about it. But don't forget about those people. You know, I think it's also important to tell a number of people kind of repeatedly what it is that you want, because you don't know at what point during your conversation someone's going to pick up on that and go, I know the perfect person for you, because I know exactly what it is that they're after. So yeah, I think before you even start sort of thinking about approaching somebody, you need to look specifically at what it is that you want, and then you need to look at how you're branding yourself. It's really easy to forget that you kind of have this social presence no matter where you are. And if you're going to be talking to people on different social networks, different social channels, you need to think about the profile that sits behind that. You know, how are you How are you viewed? You know, is the photo a good photo, or is it you drinking with your friends? You know, how do you want to be perceived here? There's no right answer either. I'm not saying that the photo of you drinking with your friends is not an appropriate one if that's what you want to portray as an image. You know, that's one thing, and that's up to you. But you do need to just give it some considered thought. Things I see an awful lot. Danny, who you'll see here, Danny is working alongside me as a university student on a year out from university, the University of the West of England. So having kind of hired students, one of the things that I saw is a number of their email addresses just are crazy. You know, you might have been a fluffybunnylover.com when you were 11, but is that an appropriate thing right now? Is that the sort of way in which you wish to communicate? So it's just thinking about all these little facets in the way that you come across to somebody. So consider your brand, consider exactly what it is. If you're going to communicate on LinkedIn, are all your skill sets up to date? Have you thought about that? Is your CV on there? Is it well formatted? Have you pushed out any relevant content? You need to be thinking about the type of people at this point. Then, once you've done all those things, the people you'll be talking to, find them, understand their networks, understand the people that they talk to, understand where they are, the conversations that they're part of, you know, and then be part of those conversations. It's not a very difficult thing. You know, if these people are at webinars, go to those webinars. And then after those webinars, talk to those people. It goes a long way when you're networking to say, oh, I've seen this that you've done, or, you know, I've picked up on this article and I'd like to ask you about X, Y, and Z. People like that. People like you taking an interest in them. And I think if you have a particular hero that you've pinpointed as being, you know, crucial for your future career, if you follow that person on every single social network and then you talk to that person, not just about what you need specifically, although that is important, you also need to talk to them about a number of different things. You need to, if you want to be remembered, you have to be remembered for your wider knowledge and understanding and interest and intrigue, I think, is a point. You need to understand what you can offer people as a point of differentiation. It's in marketing, it's your USP, your unique selling point. That's key. You know, once you've got your objectives and you know what makes you different from everybody else, utilize that, put that at the forefront of what it is that you're trying to push out there. You know, push out content, relevant content, articles that you've written, anything that you've written, become part of the conversation, and nurture those relationships. And talk to people on a personal level. And then, you know, at the moment we're in a really strange environment where everybody at the moment is online. COVID is a horrible situation, but in terms of kind of networking online, it's forced everybody into a very you know, they're very available at the moment, and everybody's available 24/7 at the moment. So this is perhaps your advantage. This is perhaps the point to get out there, talk to these people, consume as many of these webinars as you can. So when we're back to normal, you can meet these people face to face, or talk to these people on the phone, or, you know, have those meaningful real life interactions that make networking sort of worthwhile. So yeah, to kind of, my takeaways from this is just to set your objectives, understand your own USP, understand the right people to talk to them continuously in a number of different ways, not just I'm desperate for this, I'm desperate for that, give me. Talk to them in a number of different ways and build on that narrative. And, you know, then hopefully, if you can, you know, meet them in real life, or, you know, extend the ways in which you can communicate through various narratives. So yeah, there's a lot of easier ways now. Networking to get a job wasn't a thing when I was a graduate, because I'm that old that Facebook didn't really exist when I graduated, but it's now a very real asset to you, and it's perfectly possible. You know, I have my position at Avona because they saw my profile on LinkedIn, and they could see from my profile exactly the kind of professional that I was. So it's possible to get yourself the job within the space sector, whatever that is. I would never have imagined as a marketer with a degree in marketing, I'd be working in the space sector. But here I am on a webinar now talking about working in the space sector. So yeah, another thing, and we'll talk about mindset a little bit later. It's a little bit of something that we will talk about, but it ties in quite nicely to networking. Don't be afraid of the no response. No, I can't help you is still a useful response. It just means that that person at that particular time hasn't got the capacity to help you. It doesn't mean they're not interested. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try later on. It's just at that point in time, that's still a gift. Don't expend your efforts in the wrong directions. Getting a no, look at that as a positive. Okay, great. Well, not at the moment. That's fine. I need to go off and do something else. Don't look at it like, that's it, forget it. The one person I definitely need that's going to help me in my career has said no, and that's the end of it. You can't be like that. There's a number of people in this industry that will help you if you ask them. So find somebody else that's got the time to help you. That's it.
That's it. That's great. And yeah, one thing that I would add, well, besides the fact that it's interesting how we're all coming together, because I also joined Ivona through LinkedIn. Jack actually found me on LinkedIn and we had a phone call, and then I joined the team. Although, for instance, this is also another way of being part of the space industry. Okay, I'm an engineer. Okay, now I'm an executive in a startup or whatever. But besides that, you can be a space communicator, and you could be part of these events. You could be organizing these events. And if your foot into the door of the space industry doesn't start from an engineering point or a designer point, or as much as what you study, but you can enter sideways. You know, pretty much I've done basically the shift in another way. I entered as an engineer. Now I'm on the business and communication marketing point side of the things. You could do the same. You could start maybe with marketing. You could start maybe with communications, and then you go the other way. There is really no right or wrong. As much as you love what you do, and if you love being in the space industry, and you get an opportunity which is not exactly what you're looking for since the very beginning, because maybe the specific role that you are looking for isn't really available, just because it's not available, there are other side ways you can get into that. And that's okay too. It doesn't mean that in the future you're not going to do exactly what you wanted to do. It's completely fine. And also another thing, when Adele was saying, don't just ask to receive. I'm actually reading a book about, it's called The Illusion of Money. And this guy is a very famous comedian. And he was saying about exactly this, about giving and the entitlement of asking and receiving from the seniors. Most people come with the entitlement that because now they are desperate and they have done their education and they cannot find a job. So we are meant to give them help as mentors. We are meant to give them all this guidance. It's an entitlement. Sometimes students have come to me with this sense of, well, you are a senior, why don't you help me? But this guy in this book was saying he wanted to do a movie with Jim Carrey. And he was much younger than Jim Carrey. So he went up to him, he sat next to him and he said, well, I want to be in one of your movies. And Jim Carrey told him, well, you know, if you really want that, that is going to happen in the future. And the guy basically understood that he wasn't yet at the level where he could earn Jim Carrey trust, so that he could actually understand what kind of talent he had, so that he could work with him. It's the same here. If you're coming to me or anybody and you are asking, oh, why don't you help me for these? I need to understand there has to be a give and take, because it is true we made it in the industry, but that doesn't mean that we didn't earn that. Just because we had an education, it didn't mean that we didn't have to do an awful lot of other works around to get to this point. So go to a position where you want to be able also to give this mentor of yours something, you know, another skill, maybe help them with something that they need sorting out, like a give and take. Then just go with the entitlement, why don't you help me, or would you mentor me? Because you have to earn that trust. So this is, yeah, one thing I wanted to add. And now I think we can go more into the specificity of CV building and skills with Jack.
Thank you, Bianca. Yeah, there's obviously everybody's going to have a completely different CV, and there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I'm going to be speaking quite in general terms to make sure that everybody can take away something from it. Obviously, someone in software engineering is going to be vastly different from someone who's going to be doing marketing in terms of the keywords, etc., and what is actually in the body of a CV or a resume. But there's I think there's some important things to take away and some parts to focus on, which I think everybody, whenever you're writing a CV as a whole, I think there's certainly some things specifically that everybody that can input into this when constructing it. So the three things I'm going to be covering is just the template and the structure, and the good news on that is that it's not, you're just going to have to listen to my verbal breakdown of what a CV should look like. But again, it's part of the follow-up, part of the takeaway that we're providing off the back of this. Adele and Danny have been structuring a really good takeaway information pack, which has got some example templates of CVs in that, which will be accessible after this. So I'll talk way through it as well, but that will be something to follow up. So we're going to be talking about template and structure. The second piece is around positive language and focusing on what you've personally achieved rather than a group or a collective has achieved, or what you personally have achieved within that. There's that section. And then thirdly, specifically around CV building, I'm going to be talking about portfolio work, voluntary work, additional experience that backs up who you are as an individual and what you can do. And there's some other pieces around organizations and affiliations and stuff around that. So they're the three things which I think everybody, can have a bit of a takeaway around. So just going back to the template piece, I think first of all, you'd be surprised, even people who have been in the space sector 30 odd years, sometimes they can put potential clients and potential employers off when they send through a 6-7 page resume or a CV when they're applying for a job. I think ultimately what a CV should be is a simple and concise document which explains exactly who you are and what value you can add. And there really isn't any need to make that over 2 pages, really, in terms of just that conciseness. We can talk about what additional information we can provide in a short while, but I think in terms of the actual clear structure, I think you want to almost have like your own personal mission statement at the top in terms of the actual structure that takes place. What are you looking for? What are you looking to achieve? How are you looking to add value to any potential employer? What's your personal mission statement? Something like that is, if you think about how many CVs or resumes or applications a particular individual hiring manager or company would review when they're hiring, they've got probably, you may have only a split few seconds to actually grab someone's attention in terms of, this is who you need to, this is why you need to review my CV, this is why you need to review my application. So think of your own personal mission statement. You can gear that around specifically around to the job that you're applying for. It doesn't have to be general. You can have a general CV that you can make available, as Adele said, on your LinkedIn profile. A lot of people put their CV or their resume up to have that available so people could just scan it. As Bianca said, I came across her profile on LinkedIn, so people do hire people directly, people headhunt people directly from that. So if you're happy to share your CV, put it out there. But yeah, that opportunity to really grab someone with that headline, I think is something that's very important. But then, as I said, I think you've got to provide it in a very simple, clear structure that expresses your skills, your abilities, and your passion in a concise way. That's the key thing to get across. So we're talking about the actual structure, the actual length of it. Like I say, it doesn't have to be war and peace, so to speak, in terms of getting everything across. It doesn't have to be your life story, so to speak. It's got to be, like I said, a value add. How can you add value to that potential employer? Ultimately, a CV is your first impression as a candidate. So you've got to make it a good one. And it goes to say, no, I don't want to sound very basic, but the basics around grammar, spelling, that structure goes so far in terms of making that first impression when you've put something in place that looks professional and really easy to document, like I say, in a concise way, exactly what you can bring to the table. That is what's going to grasp the initial attention. So again, the follow-up form that we can provide, the information pack that we provide really gives some breakdown examples of that. I think, you know, template for that, the key, the structure is absolutely a big part of being noticed when you're applying for jobs. The second part is, I think, again, just on that again, it's a snapshot, and you've got that split second just to make an impact. So the actual language that you use in terms of that mission statement, who you are as a person, that positive language, think about how you actually word your resume. Again, like I say, it can be sometimes difficult if you're a software engineer, for example, where you can just, you feel like you may want to put all your programming languages, the real technical detail. There certainly needs to be that element in there. But again, it's more about, you know, what you can bring to the table. So again, you want to be thinking as positive as possible. And if any way possible, the tone, the language structure is very important, as again, the employer will pick up on this immediately. Everyone has their own strengths. Everyone should be playing to their own individual strengths. What's going to make you stand out from the crowd, from all of the other applications? What can you necessarily, again, what can you bring to the table? And that's where you're structuring the language and drawing on people in your circle, of get other people to review it. How would this, you know, if I was reading this document to you, how would I come across in this? You can play with the language, you can alter it, etc. But it's just really to grab someone's attention. That's ultimately what it's for. The other side of it, as I mentioned, is around focusing on what you have per se achieved. When we're talking to companies and we're getting feedback on interviews and we're getting feedback on CVs that are outstanding, that is one of the biggest concerns or objections we get from our companies that are hiring is, I really don't understand what this person has achieved. Yes, they were part of a team of people that achieved something, but what was their individual input? What was their role in that success? And often people fall into the trap of, you know, our team achieved this mission, which was fantastic for the company, etc. Okay, yeah, that is great, but what was your role in that? And that is what companies really want to see. That's really what you want to be highlighting. Even if you're in a team of 100 people and you've managed to make the success, the overall team and the collaboration, fantastic. Again, that is a strength, but what was your role within that? What part did you play? How did you collaborate with the team members? What were your strengths within that? What made that an overall success? If you're able to highlight that through your various different career, well, whether it's your first job, your second job, whatever it may be, or stuff that you've done as teams and groups or individual career coursework when you're in university or early studies. If you have achieved something, if you've made something success, just pick on your role in that. That's something I would say is a massive thing. And again, we'll pick up in terms of interviewing tips. Again, that's something that can follow on through, and you can use your CV as a springboard into the interview to pick up on like case studies, points to really talk around, to sell yourself in those situations. And I think that the next bit around the actual structure and what content you should be including is, yes, you want your experience and the technical knowledge and your academic record and what you've done in terms of coursework, modules, what you've studied on. Yes, that is majorly important to securing a new opportunity. But in terms of the going the extra mile stuff, especially when you see your first job, your first step into the space sector, and trying to kick down the door, and what Jacob mentioned about how do you get your foot in the door, I think the extracurricular activities, so to speak, have massive weight in giving you those opportunities. So we're talking about potentially portfolio work, again, if it's coursework related, any projects you've worked on, or even if it's just if you're of an engineering mindset and one of your hobbies is playing with circuitry board in the garage or shed or your bedroom, whatever it is, involved in robotics parts or your own marketing campaigns for projects you've done previously. That stuff says that actually you're going the extra mile, as they say. You're going above and beyond to really excel and learn more about yourself and show what you can achieve. People want to see that, but ultimately it shows who you are and it gets across a bit of a personality, your drive, your work ethic. So portfolio work, anything you can share on that front. It doesn't have to go into the actual body. It could be an additional document that you send along to back up an application, or it could be in Google Drives, a link in Google Drives, or something like that again would just back that up. Voluntary experience, if you've had the opportunity at any point, whether it's space sector related or not, or that particular industry related or not, again, I think that shows a lot about who you are as a person, and you shouldn't shy away from saying what you've been involved with personally and how you've helped various groups or organizations. And then there's also more obvious organizations and affiliations that you can list and get involved with. LinkedIn is, again, very obvious in terms of various groups and chats you can join. You can join, say, for example, CubeSat groups where there's conversation going on all the time about CubeSats. You can talk about whether you follow certain podcasts. We've been involved in various webinars. Whether you're involved in trade shows, visits. I myself last year, unfortunately, we haven't been able to go to any trade shows this year due to the COVID situation. But I went to Bremen with the team last year, Space Tech in Bremen. If you, as a student or a graduate, get the opportunity to go to some of these shows, put that on there as well. Let's say that because that shows that I am really passionate about the sector. This is something I've done outside of my coursework or the degree itself to go and really immerse myself in the space sector. And you can put that in the personal blurb at the end of the document to say, right, okay, this is more. It paints more of a picture of you. It makes it a bit more personable from what is otherwise quite a formal document. So I think that's something else, again, in terms of the structure and CV building. That's something really important. So I would say those three things in terms of CV building and make it applicable to everybody and that's listening is the template. The structure doesn't have to be War and Peace, doesn't have to be pages and pages and reams of everything that you've ever done. Make it concise, make it very simple, clear structure that people can really get a grip on who you are. It's a first impression, so make it a good one. Positive language, the actual tone that you're using, make sure it's a positive representation of yourself. And again, the big thing, focus on what you've achieved, focus on what you've added value. What made that piece of coursework stand out, that team event that you were involved in, if it's 3 or 4 of you, what did you bring to the table in that situation? And then, what else have you done in your own personal life that you feel would represent you well as a person to show that you're a team player, collaboration, you're accountable and you're excited about the space sector? I think that's really important as well.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much. And adding on that, it's true. Having been on the hiring side as well with other people. So first of all, when people tend to say so much about on the CV or add so many things, like too many words, and it's true, we don't need to use so many pages. Like maybe use more than 1 page. For example, if your career has been more than 10 years, this is what I've been told. So I was so far using just 1-page CV with all the main things I've done, because that's really the first thing that people say is the first page. And sometimes if the first page isn't right, they don't even go to the next ones. So you have to have that snapshot of yourself in the very first page, bullet points, very, very sharp on what you do. Also, don't really care about the pictures, putting pictures or not. I almost lost my first job because of putting a picture of me on that, but that's just bias. So if you don't want to put your picture on the CV, just don't. It's not necessary. And another thing that we really evaluated, as Jack was saying, team playing and all of those, most of the CV that we received were of students that were brilliant academically speaking, but they hadn't done anything. And then there were other students that they were, probably they were equal, but they were waiting at restaurants, working in a summer camp, going for whatever thing. They included all of those different things, which really made them stand out, because we realized, okay, this is just not a scientist, but it's a person that can lead people or can be very able to work within teams, that has done something else as a person. Because at the end of the day, you will have to work with international people coming from everywhere in the world. It's you have to be able to be extremely tolerant, understanding what is your role in the team. You are not there on your own, so that's very, very important as well. So anything you've done, if you were making pizza, literally put it on your CV. Somebody would like pizza like me, and I will say, well, let's interview this guy. So anything that you've done, and don't shy away from looking arrogant on your skills, because you have to own what you've done, anything, and really make it look like you know what you're talking about and you know what is your value in a snapshot, one first page. So now we have interview tips, and especially the red flags. There are many. So I'm giving this hot potato to Adele.
Yeah, I'll just cover off some red flags for you here. Yeah, no, I think just on that previous point as well, about not being embarrassed about your sort of career history. I've said to Danny a number of times when I was going through the process of hiring her position, it was important for me to see, and I've joked with her, but it's true, if you can hack Christmas in a retail environment, then you can hack anything that marketing will throw at you. And it shows that you can handle pressure. It shows something completely different. And this is not the first time I've heard. My previous job in my previous life, the director was very, very keen on only ever hiring people that had got some waitressing, or being a waiter or service, or answering the phones or working in retail. Very, very keen. He wanted to know that someone could handle something that was going to be a high pressure kind of environment. So yeah, that's a really good point. In my previous job, you probably wouldn't have got an interview had you put on there, yes, I've done Christmas in retail, because it shows a part of your personality. So yeah, don't be afraid of that. It's all good experience. In terms of red flags, it was, it's horrible to hear that you've had the experience, Bianca, yourself, where putting your photo on has meant that you've been discriminated against. I think, I'll use that as a little springboard here to highlight the kind of things that we can see going forward. There are certain things that we all know. Within the UK, there is the Equality Act of 2010, which means that you can't be discriminated against because of your relationship status, or your sexual orientation, or your gender, or your age, or your ethnic background, or whether or not you've got children. It's actually in an interview in the UK, they wouldn't be able to sort of ask those questions of you. And I believe it's the same in the United States. So if those kind of things come across, or you feel awkward because you've been asked anything along those lines about your personal life, like I said, sort of age, relationship status, sexual orientation, the gender you identify as, that's a red flag, because those things shouldn't be an issue anymore. Whether you're a mother or a father, or whether you've got primary care responsibilities, that doesn't stop you being good at your job. So if that is something that comes up when you're having conversations with companies, just think on that. Is that the kind of company, is that just an isolated case? Obviously some individuals don't represent the company, you can't always take it, but just the most important thing is your gut feel. When you go for an interview, it's as much about you understanding whether or not you want to join that organization as it is about that organization wanting you to join them. It doesn't matter what happens in your experience here. It speaks about that organization. So if your interviewer turns up and they're late and they don't know what they're doing, and that's something to pinpoint. You should be organized, whether they're interviewing an entry level or somebody higher up within the organization. They should treat you with the same respect they would treat anybody. So don't, whilst we spoke about entitlement, you're entitled to respect, no matter what your age is or no matter what your experience is. You're entitled to be treated with the same due diligence as anybody else. So if you feel like you've been sort of spoken down to or spoken badly to, especially if you've been made to feel uncomfortable during any interactions at all with the company, if you've seen anything on social media that they've posted out that you think, not sure I necessarily agree with that, use your own intelligence here. If it's isolated incidences, then perhaps you can go, okay, well, that's just one particular person. That particular person was a bit flustered and a bit rude that day. Well, we're all struggling with our own personal battles, so give people a little bit of leeway. But if it happens repeatedly, you see this pattern repeatedly, you look into the organization, you see they've got a really high employee turnover, for example, those little things might just flag to you that this is perhaps not an organization that maybe you want to align yourself with. Also, I've said any moment that you're sort of made to feel uncomfortable, don't feel that you have the right to say, actually, now I feel uncomfortable answering that. You might want to work for this company. You might want desperately to get that opportunity into the space sector. But use your intelligence here. If somebody's done something that makes you feel uncomfortable, say I'm not answering that. You first and foremost, everybody in this situation, everybody in this sector should be respecting one another. Not just this sector, actually, everybody in any sector whatsoever should approach anybody, whether they're taking your plates from you in a restaurant, or whether they're the CEO of an organization. You should treat everybody with respect. So yeah, that's just a really quick sort of whistle stop tour of some of the things that may be red flags to you. There, I think, go and understand what legally you could be asked for. I think in this country, we've got a full section actually in the PDF that we'll be sending around, which sort of highlights certain things that within the UK, for example, you can't be asked. I think it's worth, because you may not all be UK based out there, worth just going away and understanding the things that you can be asked, the things that you should not be asked. And then if you are asked them, demand respect, because you deserve respect. It doesn't matter, like I said, what level of the ladder you are. At any point you feel uncomfortable, say so. I think that's it.
I think that's very good. And especially if you are applying for corporations. So I've been working probably in the whole different spectrum, from a small company to the corporation to the startups now. The tone of the conversations from the HR, from the very first days, will stay the same. It's like when you're dating somebody, the red flags are there already at the very start. You're just trying not to see them. It's the same thing with interviews, with jobs, with colleagues. If somebody from the way they're answering or not answering your messages, again, talking about how to network or how to ask for a job. Somebody can come to me, to Adele, to Jack, to whoever, and ask for help. And I maybe not come back to you because I didn't have time, that the message got buried. But if I come back to you, I'm not, in a position to come back to you and saying, why did you even ask that to me? I will come back to you saying, I can't really help you now because of this reason, but maybe there is somebody else that can help, or maybe not. And this is the same that everybody should do, from the HR to all of the other things. If you see that since the very beginning, the tone is kind of, misleading. And if you see that in the way they are speaking, maybe the way they speak about minorities or being pregnant or having a relationship or whatever is a bit off, that tone will not change. The culture of that company will not change. Is that one? So ask yourself, do I really want to stay here than being hired because I need a job, I want the job, but then being every day into some kind of gossip or speculations, or not being able to be in an environment that is supportive or anything else? And I've been there in a position where I kind of didn't see what was happening. And then I was in the position, I hated it because the culture was toxic. So I had to get out of that because it wasn't really the way I could leave. So red flags, think about dating. If the HR is making you feel uncomfortable and you want to leave that date and just go home and eat ice cream, it means that maybe the job is not for you. just look about that, like those kind of red flags. It's not going to change. However you put it, is not going to change. And I think now we can go. Well, actually, we are going towards what is the last part of this session, and then we can actually answer all the questions or more questions that are coming through. And we can move again to what we basically started saying about mindset and about how you approach yourself looking for a job or branding. And again, looking at all these kind of things that put you off, and just not being afraid of speaking up for yourself, because that will help you anyway become stronger in the future, because this industry, let's be honest, is not easy for anybody. And especially if you are a gender minority as a woman, if you are any other minority, if you have any other gender, sexuality, religion, ethnicity, whatever, which is not much represented in this industry, you have to be tough, because it's going to be tough for everybody. So I'll leave the floor now to Jack, who will enlighten us more on mindset.
Cool. So yeah, in terms, would you like me to go through the interview techniques or continue with the mindset piece?
As you prefer. We can continue. We can go on the interview and then finish up with the mindset, which I think is a good closure. And then we go on the questions.
I think so. Yeah, I think it'd be good to pick up on the mindset piece again in a bit. I think I want to just pick up on the interview technique piece and hopefully answer and reflect on what Jacob said right at the start of the talk around some of the feedback that he got from the students he's worked with. But I want to talk about some various things, which again they're quite general. They're not specific to any type of opportunity as such. I think this is how you want to give the best representation of yourself again when you're in an interviewing situation. So I think just going back onto the CV, similarly with the CV construction piece, it's playing to your strengths. It's an opportunity to give an example of you and who you are and what you can bring to the table. So you always want to play to your strengths. There's no point trying to be someone different. There's no point trying to be someone that's not you. Everybody has strengths. And it's just about discovering those and really running with them. I fully believe that everybody's different. So play to your strengths, get them on the table, talk around them. If your CV has been built in a way which is identifying those, you again can use your CV as a springboard. You can relate it to your CV. And typically in an interviewing situation, the CV or resume is in front of the potential employer's hands, so that they'll probably be referenced in it. I think one of the interview notes that I have is just make sure you know your CV better than anybody else. You don't ever want to get caught out short in something that you may have put on your CV that if you get questioned on that you don't know enough about. So just make sure you know it better than anybody else, and everything you on there is truthful, and that you can actually expand on it when asked. So the other thing is actually turn your weaknesses into positives. There's always going to be questions that you get thrown during an interview is, do you have experience of this, or give me an example of that? And it may be a situation where you don't have experience in that particular subject, or you've not been involved in that situation before, but you can flip that into a positive in terms of you can be honest with it. First of all, you can get across that you're an honest person, and you can show that you can tell the truth and say, however, but I've identified this is somewhere which I am lacking. However, this is what I intend to put in place to actually get myself up to the level that you'd be looking for. You want to counter that immediately with that type of response. How can when people send out job descriptions, and this is something else that Jacob mentioned earlier, that people feel like they can't apply to a certain job if they don't completely match all the essential skills, is that job description, whenever a company posts that, it's always an idea that they've got in their head of a perfect candidate, and it's a complete wish list of experience and skill sets they need. That person is never, the person that gets the job never completely matches that job description, ever. I've been in recruitment 10 years, and I can honestly say, you never come across a perfect candidate. You're never able to tick every box the client wants, because we're in a people business. There's no such thing as perfection out there. We can strive to always better ourselves, but you can never reach that. And a job description is just what someone has got in their head ultimately of what they envisage that role to be. So don't be put off by applying for jobs where you don't tick all those boxes. You don't feel that. Have a go at it. Understand where do you think your strengths lie, and how can you build on that, and then how can you represent yourself during that interview? How can you play to your strengths and get them across in the right way? Again, I'll go back, and I appreciate I've said this multiple times now already, but Focus again on what you've personally done. Don't get drawn into what the company achieved, your past company achieved, or what your collective, your group achieved on your group coursework while you were studying for your degree. What was your input, and talk about examples, working examples, and how you brought that success to how it led to be. So again, it's focus on what you've done personally as opposed to the team, company, or what the group has. I think a big thing is be prepared for competency-based questions. This is massive when you're looking for your first role, because you don't necessarily have an actual work experience. Potentially this may be your first role. They will ask you competency-based questions. So it'll be along the lines of, give me an example when you've had to work with someone you didn't necessarily align with, whether it be approach or strategy. How did you work together to reach a successful outcome? How did you work with that person that you wouldn't usually have worked with, or maybe butted heads against? How did you make that a success off the back of that? And that could be that doesn't have to be from a work situation. It could be something in your personal life. It could be something from a sporting event, or whatever it may be. But those type of competency-based questions, there'll be loads of those thrown at you, because you may not necessarily have the actual work experience to draw on. So if you're going for a graduate role or an internship or whatever, think of examples that you can talk about, where you talk about accountability, collaboration, those types of things, case studies around that. So when somebody asks you that question, you can draw on that immediately in the interview situation to say, right, this is how I deal with that situation. This is how I bring a positive outcome. So you probably have to have a few case studies, a few war stories, so to speak, to have at your disposal, so you can go back to the interviewer and answer their questions in that way. Talked about it already, knowing your CV better than the interviewer. Don't get caught out by anything that may be listed on there that you don't know much about. This is something, the next point is talk about the here and now. We're talking about the COVID situation. There's no really escaping it, unfortunately, at the moment. And it's a global issue. Wherever you're watching from now, wherever you are in the world, it's going to be affecting you in some shape or form. So now interviews more likely are going to be conducted over video and phone platforms. So it's understanding, if you're not able to go and meet someone face to face, even that's how, if that might be your strength, meeting someone face to face, and that's how you like doing things, you are going to be forced to kind of go through the interview process on a video or a phone platform. So how does that work? How can you give a best representation of yourself on that basis? How do you come across on those platforms? And that's another thing to be working on. In terms of actually going through the interview process and talk about those job descriptions and how you can actually be proving to the interviewer that you're a good fit for those roles. It's breaking down that job description into sections, again, playing to your strengths. And then also pick it up on the areas where you maybe don't have the experience, you don't have the know-how at the moment, but how you can use your own personal motivation to drive it through, to say, look, okay, I'm not the finished article, but this is what I'm going to be putting in place to make sure I am going to be the right person for this role. That's a big thing to get across as well. And I think with regards to closing off an interview, and this relates again back to what Jacob said at the beginning in terms of the feedback piece, I think questioning the feedback, the next stage of the process, you're well within your rights when you have that interview to ask about what the next steps are, what's the time frame around this. Don't be afraid of asking those questions. Ultimately, they are the interviewer, but you need to know that information. But it will also show to them that you're thinking about the next steps. You're thinking in a positive mindset, that I want to know if I'm going to get to the next stage. I know. And if you're asking those questions, it also gives them the opportunity to say, well, okay, these are my concerns. These are some objections. These are some observations where we may feel you're lacking in these areas. And it gives you the opportunity to confront those in the interview. I would always suggest closing off any interview with just asking the question, what reservations do you have? And I say this to any candidate, any job, whether it's a graduate role or a C-level role, because there could be something very, very minor that is in the interviewer's head that they feel, right, okay, I'm not sure if they've answered that in the right way. If you don't ask that question, you could have given that answer really easily, and it might be on the tip of your tongue. You could be answer it and you could nullify that objection immediately. But if you don't ask that question, you don't give yourself the opportunity to do that. So that is absolutely crucial that you close off an interview in that way. because ultimately you'd be kicking yourself if you find out the feedback that you didn't get a specific job is something that's, you know, you could have nailed, you know, that you could provide a real solid answer for. So I think that I think that's a real good way of closing it. So just going over those things again, I appreciate I talked quite a bit there, but play to your strengths, turn your weaknesses into positives. Use your motivation, your positive mindset to turn those weaknesses into strengths. Focus on what you've done personally, not what the team or group has achieved. Be prepared for those competency-based questions. Get your war cabinet together. Get your war stories and your case studies and your examples of how you've achieved various things in the past and what situations you've brought to successful outcomes. Get those to hand. Know your CV better than anybody else. Know it better than the interviewer. Start looking at those and start thinking about the video and phone call platforms and making sure you're up to speed on how you come across on those platforms, and just making sure you ask that closing question. Do you have any reservations? What are your reservations? That's a killer question at the end.
Awesome, Jack. Thank you. So we've got quite a few questions, although some of them are very similar. However, we want to start now going really into how is the approach that could possibly help anybody to have more of a positive feel in the way they approach themselves, this very weird, crazy industry, which is the mindset. So is this one going to be shared between you and Adele, or you have something on your own only, Jack?
No, I think it's shared. Me and Adele have had a chat about this, and but it's the big thing for me is that it is a struggle out there at the moment. Like you said, Bianca, you know, we've got COVID. It's unprecedented. No one's ever been through it before. But do you know what that means? Ultimately, we're all in the same boat. You know, no one has taken really any positives from no one's had a leg up or a foot up because of the COVID situation. It's set everyone back to a certain extent. But it would be quite easy just to dwell on that situation. And if you dwell on situations and look at things negatively and the impact it's going to have, you are literally going to sit in that same place. You're never going to force yourself to take that step up. So it's again accepting that situation and thinking, okay, how can I tackle this? What do I have to do to change the way I do things? So global travel, for example, people may have been thinking, right, I want to travel to Asia for my next job opportunity. I want to travel to North America for my next job opportunity. That travel questions are absolutely gone. Right. Okay. So what other avenues has that opened up to me? What opportunities are in the UK? What opportunities are in the location that I'm in now? You know, that is the way you've got to look at it. It's like, and you've got to be open to various opportunities. I think if you're not open to opportunities and you are too narrow on your focus, and again, like what you mentioned earlier, Bianca, if you've got one thing in mind, fine, yeah, have that ambition to get there, but the road might be more winding than direct. So if you're open to opportunities, embrace those opportunities. You may get there in the end, and it may not be the journey that you expected, but it will ultimately help you get there. So that's the big thing for me. Accept the situation for what it is, but embrace the opportunities as and when they come, and create your own opportunities.
Yeah, I think also don't be afraid to fail, for things to go wrong, because you know my career has been nearly a decade and a half now, and there have been some moments where things have gone really badly wrong, you know, and being resilient, working through that, not treating that as a negative, but treating that as an opportunity to learn. You know, failure is, you know, I think I said this to Jack earlier, you know, failure is just something on the route to success. It's not the end, you know. And I always say, I've got an 8-year-old daughter, and one of the things I constantly say to her is, if you're not failing, you're not trying. So if you get those knockbacks when you're networking, if something goes wrong, use that in the best positive light that you can. Okay, that one particular person cannot help you. That's fine. At least you know that now, and you can stop, you know, trying to go down that particular avenue. It's not going to work for you. You know, that particular company was not the right company for you. You've tried really hard. You know, there were some red flags during the process. You weren't happy, or you got the job, and, you know, don't feel that you have to stick this, you know, you don't have to stick things out. If something feels like this isn't right, this isn't what I want to do. like I said, it's not a failure. It's just something, it's a bump in the road. Diversify, go and do something different, go and think about what it is that you can offer. But don't stop, don't give up, because as soon as you give up, then that's it. You know, if there's something that you want, whether it's, and it doesn't matter, it's kind of a mantra for life. If it's something that you want, you need to keep going at it, be tenacious until you get there, be resilient, you know, take the blows, and they will come, you know, guaranteed. Every career has got those moments where they go, that was, oh yeah, that was a biggie, that was a doozy, that went wrong there. But it's, you know, it's how you kind of walk through the fire in that respect, and how you come out the other side. And as long as you've learned something, that experience, however bad, however negative, it's been worth it. So yeah, just keep going. I think, unfortunately, no one is going to forge your career for you. No one is going to take your hand, deliver you to the best possible position in your career and go, that's it. You know, nobody gets spoon-fed this. Unfortunately, we're all trying to do exactly the same thing, and competition is high. But if you differentiate yourself and you keep going and you're tenacious, you'll get there. You know, there's a place for all of us in the sector, and it's growing. That's the best thing about it. You know, the opportunities are numerous, and they're getting more and more. You know, they're plentiful. There's a place for everybody here, no matter what you do. So yeah, just it's about finding that place, and that isn't easy. But as long as you believe you can make it, you'll make it. So yeah, positive mindset is a huge part of achieving.
To follow on from that as well, from what Adele's saying, yeah, the sector is growing massively. It's $1 trillion sector. It's going to get bigger. We're going to be starting to mine asteroids soon. We're taking space trips up to the edge of space with space tourism. You know, it's massive. But what I would say is, you know, explore these different sectors of the market, upskill yourselves in terms of where space is going. You know, space tourism was not a thing a few years ago. It's something that's completely new. So you have to do your own research into these various parts of the market, and you never know. There may be something like Bianca said earlier. You know, there's these webinars going on. Some of you may feel like, okay, I can host these webinars. I can turn this into a money making platform and go from there and really drive my career forward. So there's all these things, and that comes down to you individually in terms of exploring the space sector and seeing what's out there. Obviously, I want to be out there and with Avona as a whole, and like I said, raising the curtain on the space sector and share as much information as possible. But you do want to go out there and explore as much as possible, because it is a young and exciting marketplace now, and the new space has exploded. It's not necessarily the big companies that offer the best opportunities. You're not the big older space companies. Yes, they will offer graduate programs, and yes, there will be good solid careers in there. But don't be put off or afraid by joining a new startup or a small business, and just taking that leap of faith with someone. Get involved, and to be honest, I would say, just again from client feedback, whenever we get a job opportunity on, they always ask for the people who come from the smaller organizations, because those people have been involved in everything. They've been involved in a bit of marketing. They've been involved in the full life cycle design of a product. They've probably been involved in selling that product, or maybe a visit to client site. And they overall have got a much better experience level than someone maybe who's been working for one of the bigger old space prime aerospace companies that may have just been designing a bolt which attaches an antenna to something. It's you know, and that's all they've done for 5 years. So don't be put off when you're applying to various opportunities. Don't be like pigeonhole yourself into terms of, I want to get a graduate program with said company because they've got 5,000 employees and I think that's the way I go. You know, if it's a 10-man band, but they really have a vision, they've got good backing, and they're exciting, and it's in an area you're interested in, just go for it. That's one of those opportunities you should embrace, and the space sector absolutely is rammed full of opportunities like that at the moment.
Yeah, you couldn't have said any better. It's many new jobs, many new opportunities have started to ramp up, as much as, again, there is this kind of duality between the old space and the new space. And I get loads of new students asking me, how do I get into Airbus? How do I get into ESA or NASA or all this stuff? So these all agencies and all corporations, of course they exist and they will keep existing, but there is a plethora of startups, of new space companies, and the private sector, which is doing stuff which are extremely exciting. I started with a very small company in Berlin, and what Jack is so right, I didn't start with a corporation. I started doing everything. I was the testing engineer, I was the project manager, I was the one that was selling, I was the one that was buying, I was everything, and I was only 23. That's how I started learning everything. Then I moved into a corporation, and then now I moved into a startup. So there are very different ways of doing things. But also another thing which is very important about mindset, and probably this is answering a couple of questions that are coming across, like how do we network when we are remote? How do we create these opportunities? How do we do? So it's many people will blame on they don't have resources. I don't have resources. I don't have the money. I'm not there. So I don't have the capabilities. So I want to give just two examples of one is very personal. The other one is one of my mentees. So when I was studying and I really had no money, there was a major bankruptcy of my family business. I had no money, not even to go to the education. I didn't have money even to have water at home. Really, it was that bad. So I had to be resourceful about how do I get money out of this? I didn't have a car. I didn't have a driving license. I was studying. I couldn't go anywhere. But I knew that I was good at something like mathematics and physics. Those were the things I was good at. So I had to make money out of those. So I started basically asking my mom, all the friends that were mothers, and they needed children or anybody else to have repetition of mathematics and physics, because I was really the only one doing aerospace engineering in the entire community there. So I started saying, okay, I need to pay for my studies. You need to pay for our food. It's a massive crisis. This is the only thing I'm able to do. I'm not driving to them. They can come home. They can pay me an hourly fee, and I will get them through this whole hurdle of mathematics and physics. Well, that turned out to be a very lucrative job for me. So I not only was able to pay my studies, but I was also able to do many things else, even travel. So I didn't have resources. I had to create my own resources. Today, one of my mentees as well, I just got a message from one of her mentors on LinkedIn. She was in the same position as you, not coming from any education in the space sector, being very scared for some other bad experiences that she had in the industry, wanting to do something, but really didn't know how to get there. So one of her mentors at the beginning just shared on LinkedIn a random message that this girl was looking for a placement or whatever in a space industry, specifically in the UK, because she's from the UK. So because I picked up that message, because at the time I was at Airbus and being a STEM ambassador, so this allows for shadow work and so on, I said, well, okay, I'm picking up this message. Maybe we can do some shadow work with me. COVID happened. The shadow work didn't happen. That didn't stop her and didn't stop me to say, okay, now we are sitting at home. The big resources that we have now is internet. You can do anything with the internet. So we started a mentorship program. When we started the mentorship program, she got into the International Space University. She got that paid by crowdfunding, not moving out from home. She got into the network of the Space for Women and all of those. She was resourceful. She got help from me, but there was really little guidance, because then when I opened up the doors to all the things that she could do, she started asking everybody. And she did that by sitting at home. So you can do exactly the same thing. You just need one person that is guiding you through anybody else, and then new doors will open. But don't limit yourself that you need to be, as we said, you need to meet them in person. You need to have a specific skill. No, someone will pick up your message, and it can be just the breakthrough that you were waiting for. Create that resource for yourself. So this is probably answering a couple of questions here, but now we have the questions, and I'm sure we'll go over time, but anyway, I will start going through the questions. So I will start with the first one. Also, I encourage any of you to come on and ask the questions directly. So the first one that I can see here is from Arvind. Arvind, do you want to come? the one about thermal modeling or thermal structure analysis. And if you want to come on, that would be great. Yeah. Hello. I can hear him. Well, I will start reading the question in the meantime. So I found during my job search is looking out for a specific position. Every organization have their own job title and job requirements, even if it is a general thermal analysis position, especially as an entry-level position, being specific with something isn't appreciated by most companies. They are looking for someone who can perform every part of a research or a product development aspects. And this is very confusing to most. Who wants to take this question? When job roles, descriptions, and positions are quite confusing, because it's true, some of them are asking for something, but actually they want something else.
Yeah, again, I think it relates to similar to what I was saying before. It's quite often that was written, that job description was written by a stakeholder in the business that may not even have as good as knowledge as you in that particular area. Again, it's probably a wish list. They probably want everything. They probably want every box ticks, and ideally, again, that's that perfect candidate that they've got in their mind. But again, I would say don't be afraid to apply for the role. And if you have the confidence and you feel that there's still something, if you learn about that business and you, outside of the job description, you look at that company, what they're trying to achieve, what they're doing, and you feel that you can add value there, support your application with a cover letter around specifically what you can bring to the table. Again, that's I wouldn't necessarily be put off by something that is covering, if this is how you're asking the question, if it's asking for lots and lots and lots of experience overall and being able to do everything. Don't necessarily be put off that. There will definitely be parts of it that you can add value to, and you can focus on that, and again pick up on the other stuff.
Thank you, Jack. Now we have Julie. Julie, do you want to come live? Yes, no? So Julie's asking, I'm a PhD student in astrobiology, and when talking about the space sector, people mostly refer to engineers and rarely to researchers. Although research and innovation is part of the space industry, very true. What advice would you have for a young researcher willing to connect with the industry and how to market themselves? Who wants to take this question?
You've said my favorite word, haven't you? You've
market.
said how to market yourself. I think, you know, it does go back to something that I said before. You need to understand what it is that you can offer. What is your USP? What makes you different from other people? And then look back to the way in which you're already branding yourself on various networks. It is quite difficult to understand how you should benchmark yourself against people that are going for positions that are, you know, that are similar to you. That there's a lot of competition out there at the moment, especially given the COVID situation. So, you know, just look at what it is that you're trying to put out there, what content you're trying to push out there, and utilize every single network that you have, and yeah, try and ascertain as you approach any kind of marketing issue, try and ascertain what it is that they want, try to hone what you can offer, and try to put the assets that you can deliver that you know they need at the forefront of your profiles, no matter where they are, be that like your CV. So something, you know, Jack touched on earlier, like if you've got skills that meet something and you're applying for a position, and you know that those skills are specific to that position, don't use a generic CV. You know, make the most of what it is that you have to offer, understand your strengths, and utilize those strengths to get the positions that you need. Yeah.
And to add to that, actually, I must say that most of my colleagues in the engineering sector or whatever, they actually, not all of them were engineers. Most of them, the ones that are working really closely to me, they are physicists, they are researchers, they are PhDs. And some of them were either working as thermal architects on a spacecraft, because maybe their PhD was very much focused on thermal dissipation of systems. One of my closest friends as well, so he had a PhD and a postdoc in nanotechnologies, and then he became a propulsion expert, because he was using that trick from the nanotechnology and the materials to be applied onto new innovative ways of using those materials or their way of thinking to propulsion systems. So trying to understand, again, it's not a limitation at all. You can be working wherever you want. And as Adele said, trying to understand how that specific area of your interest can apply to a project. For example, for your PhD, maybe that could be very interesting for working on International Space Station, for experiments, for designing experiments, or for new habitats on other interplanetary habitats, for example. So there are opportunities, and yeah, we have to demystify the fact that only engineers work in the industry. It's not true. It's not. And some of those actually shouldn't be there, to be honest. So going to...
I was just going to jump in and say as well,
Yes.
One of the best ways of connecting with industry is to join a group, join a society. And I think it was astrobiology that was mentioned. There is an astrobiology society. Can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's Astrobiology Society of Britain, something like that. But lots of countries might have their own. So there'll probably be something that you're interested in. Whatever you're interested in, there'll be something, some group.
Thank you, Jacob. The next question is it's very relevant. So Shrutika is asking, if a particular job position requires candidate to be subjected to UK national security clearance, should we still apply for the position if I'm not a UK resident?
I would say on that basis, if that's a stipulation and you can't actually hit that, I think around some of the legalities, then you can't not respect that. I would say, just being honest. I think if that specific criteria cannot be met, then yeah, I would say maybe have a look at another avenue, maybe have a look at different locations. The beautiful thing about the space sector, I would say, is it is truly global, and if one positive thing has come out of COVID is that it's proved that we can work globally, we can work remotely, we can do all these different things. And even though we're based in the UK, for example, Ivona make majority of our placements currently in the US, and we've been doing more and more placements in the US. The UK is probably one of the smaller parts of our marketplace as it stands at the moment, even though we still make placements here. So I wouldn't be put off by the fact that that job opportunity probably is ruled out on that basis, but don't be afraid to have a look at other areas, other locations, maybe locations that you wouldn't previously have thought about before, and just go for it on that basis. Don't be afraid to explore multiple different locations.
Thank you, Jack. And so if we're also talking about this, I'm not a UK citizen, for example, and I applied, I'm Italian, and then I applied where I needed to have this UK clearance. So it has to be very specific if it is a basic one, which means you don't have to get into some kind of confidentiality, extra level of defense kind of thing, where either you need, I think something like 4 years you've been in the UK, you have to be a UK resident. But if it's just a very basic vetting thing, and it happens at Airbus, it happens in other corporations, that doesn't mean you can't apply. I applied as an Italian living in Germany. So what I had to do is just a bit more paperwork that was tedious, but that's not a problem really, unless they are specifically saying you have to be a citizen of the UK or the States, or you have to be here, you have to have been here for a certain amount of years. That should be stated since the very beginning. Otherwise, again, hiring managers are wasting your time. Now we have Jessie. Jessie, do you want to come on? Yeah.
Hello there.
So please, go ahead with your question.
I had a question regarding sort of my CV. I came from a different career. I was a mechanical technician previously, and I changed my career. I went to university, studied astrophysics as an undergraduate, and then space exploration systems for my master's. And I'm kind of finding it difficult in structuring my CV based on this. Is there any advice that you could give me and that I could adopt and apply?
What would you say specifically? Are you talking about which in the order to do it? Because would you like focus on your career history on mechanical technician, then you have your academic record at the top? Is that the type of question you're asking?
Mainly not really, to be honest. Mainly to do with how can I link all of those skills together to really apply for the role that I want. I would really like to go into the propulsion side of things for small spacecrafts or even launch vehicles. And so trying to structure my CV in that kind of way, I'm finding quite difficult.
I think the fact that you've gone and done that academically wise and with that mechanical hands-on background, I think that together is a really strong combination. I would have, in terms of structuring your CV specifically, I would have that statement. It's great you've got a clear objective there. You want to go into propulsion for small spacecraft. Yes, there's a lot of companies out there that are focusing on propulsion there. So that can be your mission statement at the top. And then in terms of the skills specifically immediately after that, which back that up, is you have hands-on experience in mechanical technician and that background. So you can do that. You've got that knowledge. But then you've also got the theoretical knowledge of spacecraft, the space side to actually back that up. So I think that skill piece underneath your statement, before you list off your employment history, I think that would be a real good punchy way to get across your experience there. And I do think that it's a really good combo.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, that will help a lot.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. The next one we have is Madina. So Madina is asking about, so coming from a background in architecture and basically wanting to design for space. And this is great because our Space Spectra #2 was all focused on architecture in space. So we actually had, you can go and rewatch the entire video. We basically spoke about exactly that. We had a panel where that was divided into engineering and space architecture. One of my very good friends is there, Michael Ciso, and she's a space architect. And Xavier de Castellier, he's an artist and also a space architect. And if you go and watch the one on our YouTube channel, they answered loads of your questions. And you can also contact them via LinkedIn. They are extremely available on any kind of social and see what they've done. What kind of projects they are involved in, like habitats for Mars or the moon. So there is a lot to learn from there. So I would say give it a chance and connect with those, because space architects actually exist and they are pretty much needed for the next couple of decades. So then we have question from, there was Tommaso I saw. Yeah. Tommaso, do you want to come on and ask your question live?
Hello, everybody. I'm quite happy to be here with all of you. Thank you.
So what was your question?
So yeah, I have a question about one of the biggest choice in anyone's career. So what's your suggestion to better understand what we should follow? Is it academia, so probably PhD, postdoc, research, and so on, or industry? At the moment, I'm a postgrad. I just finished my second master. just wanted to know if you can give some advice about that.
I think both routes are valuable to the sector. I think I would say going down the PhD route and further study and focusing on that research piece is quite different to getting involved with a commercial organisation. I think and I think you've really got to almost answer that bit yourself. Do you want to continue doing research? Do you want to continue with the academia piece, or are you now motivated to apply your knowledge to a commercial opportunity? So I think that's a decision you need to make. But in terms of companies looking for PhDs, like obviously there are certain people that look for that. We most commonly come across it in terms of PhD from the data side. We're seeing more and more now from mathematics, modelling. Obviously with interplanetary travel, etc. So modelling and analysis and academia around those particular areas, anything mathematically based, that's massive. But yeah, if you've got a desire to go and do that, I think it's ultimately which way you want to go. Commercially, there's definitely a lot of opportunities out there. May I ask what you're studying?
Yeah. So it's astronautics and space engineering.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of systems engineering, I would say we are getting lots around system engineering at the moment, and that's not in a particular geography as well. That's across the board. Everybody's looking for good spacecraft engineers, spacecraft systems engineers, and there's lots of different types of spacecraft now: CubeSats, nanosats, rovers. We work with companies that are now focusing on space debris removal. Various types of spacecraft now. So if you're looking in systems engineering for spacecraft, that is a very strong part of the market, I would say, for our overall opportunities.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks a lot again.
Yeah, best of luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Tommaso. So the next one is actually Shaheen. So I got this question already via email, and it's a very relevant one. Shaheen, do you want to come on, or I can just pass on your question? So it's about international students, and this is very relevant everywhere, pretty much. Basically, the question is, is there anything available, especially in the UK, for international students to come on and join the board, basically? And I've seen these a lot also with some other students that I know, that they are Brazilian, for example, and then they were trying to get their job they were offered a job in the UK, but for some reason the visa isn't working out, or it's taking ages. So even though they got the job in the UK and now they live temporarily in Germany, but because of all this paperwork isn't working out, maybe the job doesn't work out. And this is really heartbreaking. So what would you say to anybody who is an international citizen to come to the UK, or how do they come across this whole hassle of the paperwork?
Again, it's unfortunately there's no easy answer to that. It's not like we can say that this is the solution to that. The UK itself is going through a turbulent time with the fact that we're leaving the EU. Again, that is if you're looking at your sphere of control, and if you're looking at things that you can physically control, that's definitely outside of that. That is a wider thing that's happening, similar to COVID. It's outside of our control. So if you actually want to be based in the UK, and there's certain visa stipulations that you have to follow and go through, then you will just have to follow that. But I would say that the ability to have meetings with people over video platform and do things remotely we're seeing more and more that people are getting actually onboarded remotely. So there are, and I would say again, the smaller, newer organizations are more open to a flexible way of working. So it may, don't be afraid of asking, is this a role that could be done remotely? Could it be done from another location? Could I split my time between two places? If there's that stumbling block of getting the visa to be to a certain location, how much time you actually need to spend on site? What is there another way around that? So that's always worth asking the question. especially as like technology expands. Like we would never have done this many Zoom calls, video calls, Teams calls this time last year even. So people are getting more and more, people are getting a lot better now at doing stuff remotely. And it's being embraced by companies as well. So always ask that question, I would say. Unfortunately, there's certain things we can't get around, but I think it's worth asking.
Thank you, Jack. So we had, Sami had hands up before. Well, I think we're having it online. Yeah, Sami, you can come live and ask your questions because I couldn't see it in the Q&A session. You're on mute. Then, well, in the meantime, with the next one that I was piling up is from Valeria. So, Valeria, you had your question in the Q&A, and if you'd like to come live as well, that would be great. So you can ask that yourself.
Oh. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, I'm asking if you think that it's important in the CV to stress that we are available to move from our home city for work. If it's important in the CV to stress it.
I think if that's something you're open to, then absolutely you can put open to relocation on that. That's something that we often look at. If someone's got open to relocation in their CV, then you will be exposed to more opportunities. So don't be afraid of stating that, and then similarly matching that with your online profiles or various different platforms. State that on your LinkedIn profile as well, that you're open to relocation. You know, you can put in there the type of role that you're looking for. So whether it be propulsion or whatever it may be, spacecraft, you can say this is a statement and I'm open to relocation for the right opportunity. That will definitely encourage people, regardless of where you are based, then to say, right, okay, yeah, why not get in touch if this person's open to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So yeah, we're running a bit late. However, so I'll put across two more questions. Actually, Jesse had another one, which is very interesting about any advice on launching a startup in the new space sector. I think this could be a whole massive new event because actually I'm doing that. So I will have advices, and I'm advising also mentees how now to do that. But it will take ages to answer that question. Probably we are taking this on board, and we will have another event about how to be your own entrepreneur into the new space economy. I think that would be very interesting for many. Now we have Diana. Diana, do you want to ask your question live? We have Diana, and after that we have Sahana, which also asked via email. Hello, Diana.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, so I do speak several languages, but I haven't had the money to get the certifications. And of course, yes, I want to apply to different jobs or investigation while I'm undergraduate. And I'm looking forward to get the certifications, but will they believe me? What do I do to actually prove that I do speak those languages? Because what if I get to the interview, or well, what if I don't get to the interview because they don't think I actually speak it? Do you understand what I mean?
I do. I don't have certifications either because I didn't have the money. So I do understand.
I think maybe you can solve this. My marketing brain goes a bit like, oh, that sounds like content marketing to me. You know, you can solve this through pushing out content through your own channels. If you, I mean, I don't know what languages you can speak, Diana, but if you, you know, if you're fluent in Italian, for example, then write a piece for the space sector, write it completely in Italian, and then within your CV, you know, provide links, hyperlinks to Google Drives, Google Documents that show you showcasing your ability to speak those languages. I think this is a case of, if you can't have anybody from an authority rubber stamp your ability to do something because you haven't got the money to pay for that, then just demonstrate it anyway, and put that content out in as many different channels as you can. Talk to people, talk to them in their, you know, in whatever language. You know, if you're going for a job in Italy and you speak Italian, or you're going for a job in, you know, wherever, Spain, and you speak Spanish, talk to them in that language. I think, you know, that if you've got the ability, and it's a wonderful ability to speak multiple languages, demonstrate it repetitively, and wherever you can, in every opportunity. So I think, yeah, you don't need a piece of paper to certify your ability to talk a different language. Just prove that you can do it.
Very true. Thank you, Adele. So we have one last question from Sahana. That question was also asked via email. So Sahana, do you want to come online, or I can read your question? There we go. Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for a really useful presentation from everyone. Just had this quick question. So I am a master's student, and I have worked on, let's just say, too many domains so far. I was in micropropulsion, space electronics, and communication, but they've all been some sort of university projects and part-time jobs. And because of my current situation, I'm just thinking, when I put forward this, I don't know, I don't have this solid block that says I have full-time experience for so many years in this domain, but more like my experience comes in bits and parts. I sort of don't want to look confused to the person trying to recruit me, but I also want them to understand that I had to try many things to understand what I really like. So I don't want to look like a confused person. And of course, any place I start newly as a person, my job experience when I'm starting new is going to be at 0. So I have to start somewhere. But my experience comes in installments. Do you have a way to make this add up to a picture somehow? Sorry for the long question.
No, thank you. That's a good one. Jack.
Yeah, I think when you structure your CV again and your resume, you can. It doesn't have to read strictly like employment section. You know, that section can be project or collaborations or ongoing work, group, whatever it may be. You can title that particular area. It could be experience. It could just be experience. And then you can bullet point the key things you've achieved, key things you've learned, things you've been involved with in that particular section. And I don't think that'll be too confusing. I think it's a real positive thing, if anything, to show the very different things you've been involved with, the different situations you've been experiencing. So you can still section it quite neatly within the template, within the CV structure. But it doesn't have to be scattered around. You can bolt those experiences together, and I would call that experience, or relevant experience. Even you can even dictate it and say relevant experience to this particular role. You can niche it down if you're applying to a certain job. Like Adele said earlier, you know, don't just have a generic profile or a generic CV. You can gear that CV up to that particular role and highlight and move those bullet points around different projects. But you can still put it in a very neat section in terms of what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, thanks so much. That helps.
Great.
Thank you, Jack. So I think, well, we are generously over time, which I'm not surprised, because it's a massive topic. And so I think we are closing, we are wrapping this up now. And I want to thank you, everybody who joined us today, really, and all your questions. I really hope it's been of value. You've got something new, more out of this. And of course, thanking Jack, Adele, and Jacob, and Danny in the background, who have been sharing very valuable information, and we will still be sharing in the future. So as we said, there will be recordings on Ivona YouTube channel, so you will have the recordings again, together with all the other events, Space Spectra, we've done. You will get a booklet with way more details, information, and resources for your networking, job research, etc. And that's it. So it's time to wrap up. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good continuation of your day. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.